Live on Facebook. We are streaming.
I'm not sure.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. And thank you for joining us for our fifth Friends and Fiction official book club meeting. I'm Lisa
Yay!
Harrison.
Whoop, whoop.
Woo! I'm Lisa Harrison, Atlanta, and I am joined by my beautiful co host, Brenda Gardner in South Carolina.
Hi, everybody.
And we are so excited because tonight we are discussing one of my favorite books, Feels Like Falling by the fabulous Kristy Woodson Harvey.
Thank you.
We will get into some questions for Kristy in a moment, but Brenda, would you do the honors of introducing our special guest?
I would be really happy to, Lisa. Well, Kristy Woodson Harvey is the USA Today bestselling author of what we're discussing tonight, Feels Like Falling. But also the Peachtree Bluff series, Lies and Other Acts of Love, Dear Carolina, and the much anticipated This Spring, Under the Southern Sky. Kristy's the winner of the Lucy Bramlett Patterson Award for Excellence in Creative Writing and a finalist for the Southern Book Prize. Her work has been optioned for film, and her books have received numerous accolades. Kristy is a summa cum laude graduate of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill School of Journalism and holds a master's degree in English from East Carolina University with a concentration in multicultural and transnational literature, which I'm very excited to hear more
Say
about.
that 3 times fast.
Her writing has appeared in numerous publications and websites, including Southern Living, Traditional Home, Parade, and USA Today. She also blogs with her mom, Beth Woodson, on Design Chic about how creating a beautiful home can be the catalyst for creating a beautiful life. Kristy, you don't know how much I could use your help with that.
Me too.
But even with all those accolades, we know Kristy best as one of the Fab Five, our friends and fiction authors who brightened our Wednesdays during the pandemic. So welcome, Kristy.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yay.
Thanks. Kristy, I just wanted to say before we get started that Feels Like Falling was such an amazing sort of a tapestry of modern relationships because it had, friendships and sort of modern relationships all woven together into just such an interesting way. So I'm excited to be discussing it tonight. Kristy's going to share her summary of the book in a moment, but readers, for those who may not have read it yet, we'll keep the discussion spoiler free, at least that's our intention, until 7:30. Lisa will give the spoiler warning before we proceed. So with that, please put your questions for Kristy in the chat box, and then could you also kick us off with just a summary of Feels Like Falling for discussion?
Absolutely. Well, first, huge thank you to you two for, really spearheading this project. And this is a huge thing for all of us. We're so grateful to you, and we know how much work it is. I think sometimes these things look like, oh, you just pop on for an hour, when really the behind the scenes preparation is huge. So we are just so grateful, and it's really been a treat for all of us to get to know you better. And you've just been a huge boost to Friends and Fiction, and we're so glad to have you in our lives. So thank you for having me. And thanks to everybody for reading Feels Like Falling. It makes me so happy. So for those of you who have not read it, Feels Like Falling is a story about Gray and Diana, who are two women from very different worlds who meet when they're both having a really bad day. So during a time when Gray could really use a little good karma and Diana could really use a little good luck. Instead, Gray inadvertently gets Diana fired from her job. So this is not a good start to these two women's relationships, but it does end up thrusting them together in this sort of unconventional way. And they realize really quickly that they actually do have quite a lot in common. They've both just split with partners. They both are having sort of a major situation with a sibling. They've both lost their mothers, albeit in very different ways. And they find a lot of common ground really quickly and end up forming this real true friendship that neither one of them was necessarily looking for, and that they certainly had not expected. And I like to say in the story that they help each other move into happily ever after, the sequel, which we all need sometimes when the first one doesn't work out. So So yeah, that's it. That feels like falling. And I'm just excited that y'all are reading it. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks so much, Kristy. And that's a perfect segue into our first question for this evening. We did take some questions in advance, and we're going to take some live. But Gray and Diana had such an amazing friendship that formed, over the course of the book. And this might have been Lisa's question. I'm not really sure because it doesn't have a name, but Diana and Gray are two very strong female characters, and they come from different backgrounds, but they form an unlikely but beautiful friendship. Have you ever had an unlikely friendship that you cherish? And I would ask that of our readers too, to share in the chat box.
Oh, I love that question. That's a really good one. Yeah, I mean, I think many of them. I mean, I have several friends who I think on the surface seem very, very different than I am, or maybe we don't seem to have a lot in common, but there's something that bonds us. And I really even think that when I look at, I was actually thinking about this earlier, when I think about friends in fiction, and we have all these people, we live in all these different places, we like different things, we think different things, we believe different things, we drink different types of coffee in the morning, whatever it is. But we have this one thing that really bonds us, and that's that love of story and that love of books. And even though we might be completely different, we have that one common ground that we can really relate to each other on. And so it does, help you right away to form these really strong relationships. But I think that, a lot of friendships are, sort of like falling in love in some ways. I mean, I think sometimes you meet someone and maybe you don't hit it off right off the bat, but then later on you meet at a different time and you sort of like each other more, and you are the person that person needs in their life right then. And then I think sometimes you meet someone and you just know they're going to be your best friend. Like, it's like you've known them in another life or something. Like, you meet them and you just click. And those are, to me, sort of my favorite kind. And Gray and Diana are sort of in between that, because they don't meet in the best way, but they hit it off really quickly, as soon as they kind of find that first piece of common ground. And I think, they both need things from each other at that particular moment in their lives. I mean, Gray is really missing her mother, and she's, just split from her husband, and she just needs to be nurtured. Like, she needs someone to take care of her. And Diana is such a nurturer, and that's really what she's able to give Gray. And I think, for Diana, and you see this throughout the book, but she's never really been able to commit to a relationship. Her mother left, she was split up from her siblings. And just ever since then, she can't really quite, commit to anyone. And I think inadvertently, she is able to accept Gray and her son Wagner's love. And that really helps her to be able to move forward and finally find that romantic relationship that she's been looking for, that she can really accept and commit to and sort of move forward in her life. So they do each give each other something that the other one really needs. And I think, a lot of times that's what our friendships are about, is about complementing each other.
That's so true. And your friends, become your family, because, they become so important to you. And I really feel like, both Gray and Diana were very well developed characters. And another of our readers asked, and as a matter of fact, about that, that Diana's character was so rich and well developed. Anne Greenland Kennedy says, was there someone in your life that you modeled her after?
Not specifically, but I think the thing that I love the most about Diana is just her grit. She just is going to keep going. She's just going to make it. And there's a prologue that I actually ended up cutting from the book, but she talks about how you just have to get through today, and that tomorrow is going to be better, and that's sort of her life mantra. And she says, I sure do have a lot of today to get through, because, sometimes our lives feel like that the day is just, you just can't get through it. But she has been through so much, and she has a lot of wisdom about her. And I think Gray needs that, because, she is a little self-involved, and she does see the world in a very different way from Diana. And I do think once Diana comes into her life, her problems seem a little smaller. But I love that about Diana too, that she recognizes that everyone has their own set of problems that they're going through, no matter who you are, no matter that everyone has something that they're facing, and that most of the time we don't even know what it is. So, I do like that they can sort of recognize that in each other. But Diana, I will have to say, I think she's one of my favorite characters that I've ever written. I felt like I learned things from her. I felt like I love people that have that kind of dry humor and that dry wit, which I don't have. So writing her was very, very fun for me, just to be able to sort of tap into someone who had that. And it's so funny how that happens, because I'm like, God, she's so funny. I'm writing her. Why am I not this funny? Like, what? She was a great character to get to write, though. I loved her. She was my favorite. I'm going to play favorites, and she was my favorite.
Well, I think a lot of our book club members probably felt the same way, because so many of the questions that came in advance were actually about Diana versus Ray, which you would find a little bit surprising. And I will dally a little bit from Diana, though, to say I think you did. I wanted to point out how interesting I thought the dedication in the book was, because we talked about friendships, and I don't know if other people read it, but I'm gonna, if you don't mind, I'm gonna take the liberty to read it. It says, to my forever friend and partner in crime, Kate McCandless McDermott, who introduced herself by cutting my hair the first day of kindergarten. The rest is history, which I thought was just so wonderful, because this book is so, so much about friendship. It's just so cool that was the dedication.
Well, thank you. And oh my gosh, she's so funny. And every book I've written, she's like, why is it not dedicated to me? When are you going to dedicate a book to me? And so the funny thing is, I sent it to her, I just emailed it to her, and I did not say one word. And it was almost like a test, like, how quickly is she going to read it? And she opened it like that night, and she was like, is this real? Did you really dedicate it to me? Or is this just like in my email? And I was like, no, it's real. She's like, oh my God, I can't believe it.
Maybe she thought you were putting the dedication to a different person in each email.
Maybe. Yeah. She was so excited, though. But yeah, she's funny. And that's an example. I mean, we are so different. I mean, we really are, but have just been like the best of friends since we were 5 years old. And I mean, she is like the biggest tomboy that you've ever met in your entire life, like always has been. And I've never been prissy. Like, I think people, like, it takes me like you can ask the Friends in Fiction ladies, because they were just with me. It takes me like 5 minutes to get ready. Like, everything I do is like very simple, but I'm also very like, I would not say I'm a tomboy, like we'd be going to parties and I'd be like, you cannot wear your Umbros. Like, you cannot wear that to the party. I mean, she's just hilarious. And she's really funny. She has that real draw wit, but yeah, so we were in some ways like not the pair that you would put together, but we've just, I don't know, it's just worked. She's been one of my closest friends my whole life.
Those make the best friendships, though.
They really do. So I
think that's why people were so, I think that's why people were so drawn to Diana and Gray, because we can relate with the friendships that we have.
Well, when you think about the person that you could like call at 3 a.m. and not even, like, there's some book I was listening to and they were like, who's your 3 a.m. friend? And I'm like, oh, that's Kate. Like, she's definitely my 3 a.m. friend. And we do, I mean, gosh, she called me at like 2 a.m, like a few weeks ago. And like, neither of us have been up at 2 a.m. in a very, very long time, but yeah, it's good to have that person, even when you're just like, I can't sleep because I'm thinking about this. What do you think? To be able to have a person in your life like that, it's pretty great.
That is awesome. I'm going to ask one more question about Diana from the advanced group, and then Lisa's going to pull some things from the chat, which I imagine is very interesting by now after all of our talk of friendships. But Anissa Joy Armstrong asks, I love the relationship between Diana and her brother Philip.
Yeah.
What research did you have to do about autism?
So that's a really good question. Actually, one of my closest friends has a sister with autism when we were growing up. And so I spent a lot of time with her. And so it was always something I was really interested in. She had Asperger's. So she was had a very different type of autism than Philip. I mean, she was very high functioning, like graduated from high school, whereas Philip's, certainly has a more severe presentation of all, I'm like losing my words tonight, y'all. Presentation was the word that I was looking for, of autism. So I did do a lot of research on autism, but even more than that, it was looking at, we're very different in 2020 about what we know about autism, about how to treat it, about, what that looks like, than we were in even the 80s. I mean, in the 80s, it was a very different world. And not only that, but I had to do a lot of research into what the laws would have been around, a child that had special needs in a family being fostered or adopted out, what that would have looked like and where he would have gone and where he would have been now, not having any parents to kind of come back in and claim him. So that was really the bulk of my research, was more the legalities of, what this looked like. And I feel like I've known, a good number of people with autism. I had friends that I could call. I had, moms that I knew that had children that had, some more severe presentations that I could say, what would this look like? Or what do you think? So that was really great to have people to be able to have those kind of honest conversations with about, what do you think? And should I say this, or how do I phrase this the right way? Or, because it is always scary when you're writing about something that is a very sensitive topic. You want to make sure that you do it in the right way. You don't ever want to be callous about your portrayal or anything like that.
Absolutely. You want it to be sensitive, but it really rang true. And I think our readers, I think the readers picked up on that. Lisa, I'm going to switch gears a little bit. Would you like to share some things from the chat for Kristy?
Yes, I would. First, I have a question.
Okay.
Barbara Wojcik, I'm sorry if I pronounced your last name wrong. She said she loves the book cover, and she wanted to know, was that the first cover that was presented to you? And she wishes she was there right now swinging on the beach.
Oh my gosh, so do I, Barbara. I want to be like right there in that swing. So weirdly enough, yes, this was the first cover that was presented to me. My editor, the cover's always like a big ordeal. I mean, it just always is. But this was our fourth book together. So, she really knew what I liked at that point and kind of the vibe we were going for in the story and all of those things. We did have a lot of debates before we started looking at covers about, did we want to have 2 women on the cover? Did we want to have no women on the cover? We just didn't really know. And so we were going to look at mock-ups of a lot of different things. So she would email me periodically and she would say, I got covers, but none of them are right. And I would be like, but I want to see it. Like I want to see the cover. And she would be like, no, they're not right. They're not right. And so finally she emailed me and she was like, okay, what do you think? And I opened it and I was like, yes, this is the cover. Like it was just love at first sight. It really was. I love this cover. I think it could be my favorite one. It's a close call. I don't know. I happen to have this sitting here. This was not in preparation for this. It was for something I was doing yesterday, but I love Lies and Other Acts of Love. Like that is one of my all-time favorite covers. I love how it's kind of like a little bit sepia toned. And that one I do really love, but Feels Like Falling is pretty close. And the funny thing is, I would have told you, I'm not a huge red fan. Like it's just not one of my favorite colors, just like in general. I love it on this book. And I love the spine. If you and my name's in like kind of Carolina blue, which is so pretty.
I love it.
Yeah, they nailed it. I mean, this cover, I saw it and I was like, yes, that's it. And so I remember somebody saying, she looks kind of lonely. And I was like, she is. That's the point of the book.
But she also got such rejuvenation from the water in the book too. And it's cool that, that it's on there.
Yeah.
I will add, I know Lisa has some more, but I just noticed Carrie Soderman had said that this is the first book she's read of yours. And it means so much to her because, well, it means so much to me, she says, because I really did feel like I was falling at the beginning of the pandemic. Oh. And so I think that's a really interesting analogy, to the book title. I think we all kind of felt that way.
You did. And I think that was the weird thing about when this book actually came out, because I actually wrote it before the Peachtree Bluff series. So, I mean, this book easily could have come out in 2017. but I got contracted for the Peachtree Bluff series, wrote Slightly South of Simple really quickly. And we decided to go ahead with that and then put Feels Like Falling Out after. And I had, some reservations about that at the time. And I thought, I don't know if this is, because, you do always want to feel like you're moving forward and you're getting better and you're writing your best book. And so I did completely rewrite Feels Like Falling before it came out. But, it's at the same time, a lot of it is true to the original story also. But then when it came out, I thought, well, this was so perfect, because I do think, it is a hopeful book. It's a light book. I think it's something easy to read. It was not, I certainly think there are moments that I hope pull at your heartstrings, but I feel like overall it's something that was optimistic to read and was a good read for a time where we all sort of felt like our lives were falling apart, because that's certainly what's happening with these women. And in big ways and small, I think we've all felt like, especially at the beginning, we were all trapped at home and just the uncertainty of life, which we're still in. But I think you adapt, at some point, like we begin to adapt a little more to like just the unknown and the not being able to control it. So strange times.
So true. But just as they caught each other, I think we're kind of all catching each other as well and helping each other out. So that's my moment of seriousness.
Yes.
And Friends in Fiction has been the escape for all of us. It's been the one thing this year that has been positive through all the chaos. Like Friends, I don't know what I would have done without.
I love that. That's so nice. I feel absolutely the same way. I really do. I felt like, it was such a simple, small thing. And, you really never know, like things that are going to absolutely change your life. And it was a group text. Hey guys, let's have wine tonight on Zoom. And like, oh, hey guys, we should do this on Facebook. Wouldn't that be fun? And then that was it. We never had any idea that we would still be doing it, or we would have met all of y'all, or 23,000 people would be here with us. Like, what?
And demands for merchandise.
Yes. Merch, podcasts. Yes. It's great. It's absolutely wonderful. We were like sitting around at Tybee, like we accidentally started a business. Like, oh, here we are.
Absolutely. Lisa, what else do we have?
I do have a comment that I wanted to share regarding the friendship. Stephanie Brown says, I was blessed to have a friendship with an 80-year-old lady when I was a 20-year-old bride. She blessed me with cooking lessons, tips on marriage, and helped me mourn a miscarriage that not many knew. I did not tell her either. She just knew. She shared some of her pink peonies to remember and heal. I miss laughing with her, working jigsaw puzzles, and yes, teasing her about cheating in Scrabble. Friendships are precious gifts for sure, and treasure them.
I love that. That is so special. And I think that's so true. Again, that's not the completely typical. It reminds me of Elizabeth Berg of Arthur Truelove. I don't know if y'all have read that, but it is a friendship between an older man and a younger woman. And I said this on the show, but I read it and was like, oh my gosh, this could solve all of the world's problems. Like we just need, if these people could find each other. That's wonderful.
I know. That's so funny.
I do have one other question from the chat. Harriet Selby says she's always wondered how you write characters that are so different from yourself and make them so real.
Well, that's nice. Thank you. I wish that I had a really good answer to that, but I honestly don't know. And I think that was when I maybe thought that I was going to write. I had been working on, I went to journalism school, as you said in my intro, but I was actually working in finance when I started writing. I was not writing at that time. And I had never wanted to write a book. That was just not really my life plan. Yeah, I didn't think I was good at it. People would say, oh, you should write a book. And I would say, no, I'm not creative. Like I like to tell real people's stories. And I don't know. And then I got just this sort of burning desire to write a book, but I didn't think that it was going to be to get published, I just thought, I'm going to write a book and I can say that I did it. I probably won't be able to finish it because, you know, people say that all the time, but who knows? You don't know if you can finish a book until you've written a book, right? I mean, so I actually ended up writing a couple of manuscripts and they were okay, but I didn't really think there was something I wanted to really share with the world. And when our son was like maybe 3 or 4 days old, I was actually bringing him home from the hospital. And I was standing in our room with him and I was just looking down on him. And I just remember thinking like, oh my gosh, I cannot imagine, you know, what it would be like to give this up, like to be in a position where you knew you were not the right person to raise your child, and to be able to give someone else the gift of this child, and to be able to give your child the gift of the right person to raise them, even when you have this just deep and instant connection with them. And it was the weirdest thing. And it hasn't really ever happened to me again, but it was like, I could just hear Jody and Khaki, who are the protagonists of Dear Carolina, like in my head, just sort of like talking to me. And it was like, after I wrote Jody, and she was so different than I was, and she wasn't even really like anyone that I knew that well, but it was like, once I wrote her, I thought, okay, you know, this is something I could do. Like, I think I can do this. I think, you know, this is something that I can do. And, I think it's just trying to really put yourself in someone else's shoes and like really dig deep into what would that feel like? What would that look like? And I think you can, you know, some experiences are really universal. Like you can really draw on something that's happened to you, something that caused you pain in some way that might be the same way that they're feeling, you know, at that moment. And even for like, you know, Diana and that feeling of like being displaced, I was editing this book, during like right after Hurricane Florence, and our house was like gone and we were out of our house and we were moving all over the place all the time. But even still, like we had options, you know, like we knew that we had places to go and we knew that we could make it work, you know, we were going to be okay. But even in that moment, I just remember thinking like, but what would it feel like if you didn't? Like, what would it feel like if I didn't know that it would be okay? And I do think you see a lot in this story, like that feeling of just being very untethered. I'm a Cancer, like I need home. I like my little shell, you know? So just being like place after place and just all over and moving. It was a very unsettled time for me because I just need that, you know, home base. I'm such a homebody. And so I do think, you know, I hope that you feel a lot of that, because it might not be about home necessarily. For Diana, it is a little bit, but it's just about that feeling of your life turning upside down a little bit.
Absolutely. It really shows up in Diana in the way that she relates to other people, and the way that she, you know, her home situation. Yes.
Well, and I think one of my favorite things about her is just like that. I think the part of the story when I knew who Diana was when she has these girlfriends, they would all take her in. Like she did not need to be in the situation she was in, but you know, she's like, sometimes your pride is all you have left. And I'm not going to hear, I told you so. I made this mess and I'm going to clean it up, you know? And I think that is who she is as a person. And it says a lot about the way she was raised. And I think it says a lot about that feeling that she has. And even though she does have these people in her life, that she can't really depend on anyone because she's been let down so many times.
Yeah. And I think that's a very relatable feeling for readers when they're going through the book. Well, I have a question about I think we're almost at spoiler time. I don't think this is a spoiler. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Lisa.
Well, I was just gonna say it's 7:30 right on the dot. So if you haven't read the book, I don't know is your next question spoilery?
Sort of. It's a two-part question. Okay, so Lori Crittenden had asked in advance she said she loves your characters. Have you thought about doing another story with Marcy's character or with characters around Diana's restaurant?
Oh, fun!
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! Like around.
I've been waiting
gosh.
for this one.
That is such a like Fanny Flagg Whistle Stop Cafe kind of feeling, right? Like you could have so many great characters in and out of Diana's restaurant. No, but I'm thinking about it now.
And Marcy is so much fun.
No, Marcy's so fun. You know, I was thinking today, that's something that I don't do enough. like, I don't have to write a sequel to Feels Like Falling, but I could write a book about Marcy and have, something else. So I do think that's something I'll start doing more, especially I think as you start writing more and more books, it's fun for readers to be able to kind of pull those little, Easter eggs out and see like, oh, I remember that person. But yeah, Marcy's a hoot. She would be a really fun character to write.
She would, and we heard it here first. Marcy's going to have her own book.
Yeah, Marcy needs a book, and we need something with, Diana's Cafe in it. That would be so fun. I can really see it being like where all the locals hang out, like all the cool people in town that are like
absolutely.
Maybe Coffee Kyle. Maybe Coffee Kyle can make a cameo.
I love Coffee
like
Kyle.
Peachtree Bluff, right? Like it needs a little.
He could do a little cameo.
Little Coffee Kyle cameo. I love it.
That's so funny. This is kind of related to that, but Asa Whittle and Suzanne DiFilippo also wants to know this question. We learned who caught the bouquet in Feels Like Falling. Does that mean a sequel is brewing? So there could be, multiple.
There could be. I know. Well, and I really do. I always like to leave a little hole because you never know what you're going to want to come back to. And after writing Peachtree and loving writing a series so much, I was like, oh, I don't ever really want to like box myself in so that I can't go into anything. The weird thing about Feels Like Falling was just the timing of everything because, I had written Feels Like Falling, then written the Peachtree Bluff series. And by the time Feels Like Falling came out, I had already finished Under the Southern Sky, which is my next book.
Wow.
So it didn't really leave a lot of room for that. But I think I would like to plan and write another series just because I enjoyed that a lot, or at least a book and a sequel, just because I think it does give us a lot more space to get to know. I mean, there's so many stories to tell about all of these different characters. But yeah, I mean, they could definitely show up. And so many people are doing these like great anthologies and things now, or they have like novellas. And that's the place where I can really see like coming back to a story like Feels Like Falling and doing something just like fun and maybe not a full novel, but so that we get a little bit of an update on their lives.
Yes. In fact, Michelle Marcus is all about hearing more about the gossip at the Barnacle.
Mm-hmm.
In the chat.
Right?
Yeah.
I know.
And I have a question from Michelle that I wanted to ask.
Oh, good. That was a good segue then.
That was perfect segue. She wants to know, would you consider writing a book that took place in another region or country?
Yes, I absolutely would. The only reason that I haven't is because I think it's hard to write. This is going to sound so stupid because I'm like writing these people that are not like me, but I think it's when you go somewhere and you visit it, even if you visit it all the time, like even if you know it, you think you know it really well, you're still probably not living like a local necessarily. And so that's the thing to me that I'm always like, I never want someone, like I don't want to write a book about, Maine and someone from this little town in Maine that I write about, pick it up and be like, clearly she came here 2 weeks one summer and thought she was an expert on Maine. I mean, that's the thing. And they're even the little idiosyncrasies. And I think as a born and bred Southerner, I think this is why this like stands out to me so much because often, people will write a book about the South that, have not spent a lot of time in the South, and even just like phrases. And you're like, no Southerner has ever said that. Like that is not like, that's not something, or like they're little tiny idiosyncrasies and like the ways that we say certain phrases in certain regions of the country. And I think I would just be so nervous the whole time that like, I said the wrong thing or like, and you don't know it because that's just second nature to you. And I remember like the first time, with having copy edits come back and having copy editors be like, what does that mean? Or like, and you're like, what? People don't say that other places, but you don't know it because, anyway, y'all know what I mean. Well, no, you don't, because we're all in the South, so we don't.
I was gonna say, I know exactly what you mean. Like,
I know exactly
there's just certain
what you
ways.
mean.
Like, what comes to mind to me is the bless your heart. You know,
Yeah.
you got to use that in the
It's got to be right. You got to get
Yeah.
that right.
right
Mhm.
context.
Yeah, exactly.
What comes to mind for me living in Atlanta is when people out of state refer to Atlanta as hot Atlanta.
Yeah.
People who live here, we
Would
hate
never
that.
call it hot Atlanta. Right. But that's what I'm saying. Like, okay, so I've been to Atlanta a lot of times. Well, and I mean, it's not that I haven't written about other places and like, and under the southern sky, like Palm Beach is a big part, but you have a woman who was raised in this little coastal part of North Carolina who is living in Palm Beach. That's a different thing, right? Because she has the experience that like I would have if I moved to Palm Beach. She doesn't have to have the dialect right, or, you know, it doesn't have to be, it's her experiencing that part of the country as opposed to a person who's, you know, has roots there, I guess.
That makes
Well,
sense.
speaking of sequels, Dallas Strawn would like to know, when are we getting a Peachtree Bluff Christmas book?
That is a really common question that I get a lot, which makes me think that we need a Peachtree Bluff Christmas book. So I actually just signed a contract for not for Peachtree Bluff Christmas. That was a bad like lead in. I should have phrased that I phrased that very, very poorly.
Coffee Kyle back for Christmas.
Yeah,
No, I know.
I know. I really want that though. I mean, I think it's necessary and I have it all in my head. And the funny thing is like right now, so Beaufort where I live is, you know, what Peachtree Bluff is kind of based off of. And so, you know, we're kind of gearing up and like all the Christmas flags went up last week. And although we were laughing, we're like, it's 85, but it's Christmas. But you know, all the little kitschy things that we do are going to start happening and it's so fun. And so my husband and I were talking about it the other day and he actually like emailed me a list of things like not to forget to put in the book that I am not writing yet, but I would like to, but so I actually just signed I haven't told anyone this yet. So this is the official first announcement.
Exclusive.
Yeah, it really is. Because I just signed for my 2022 book. Yes, my 2022 book. But we discussed, because that book will probably be in hardback, that if I do want to do a Peachtree Bluff Christmas, it kind of has to be like a separate contract because it would be in paperback, obviously, or something itty bitty and Christmas shaped, you know. But yeah, I mean, I would love to write a Christmas book. I think it would be so fun. Few people could love Christmas as much as I do. So I already have my angel. Do you see my angel back there?
Oh, I didn't, but yes, it's back there. Yay.
I have my tree up.
Holding my, you do? I'm like
Are you
holding
kidding me?
myself back. I'm holding myself back. I'm like, Thanksgiving Day, it is going to be a Christmas explosion in here.
Oh my goodness. I can't even think about that yet.
I normally wait till the day after Thanksgiving, but 2020, anything goes. My tree's up. I have my wreath on the door.
I started watching Dash and Lily on Netflix last night. It was like my first kind of like Christmas moment, and it takes place at the Strand Bookshop in New York. And I was like, oh, New York at Christmas. It's like crying. It's like I miss it so much. I want to go to New York at Christmas.
Aww.
So sweet.
You know, this isn't a question from the chat, but I'm just curious. You just mentioned this about you wrote Feels Like Falling before Peachtree Bluff, and you're about to launch. You've already written Under the Southern Sky, but it doesn't come out till spring, and now you're looking at 22. Does it ever feel like you're in this time warp with your schedule?
Well, like to the point tonight that I was like, oh my gosh. So I did an event this weekend it was like a pre-order event with Reading with Robin, where she was doing a fundraiser for No Kid Hungry. It was so great, but it was like a pre-release event. So we were all talking about our next books. And so at this point, you know, Under the Southern Sky is like really on my brain because we're talking about it a lot. We're planning for it a lot, but I am deeply in the edits of this whole other book. So even that one, it's like you have to go back and kind of refresh yourself. Like when you were saying earlier, can you tell us about Feels Like Falling? I'm like, make sure that you talk about feels like falling, not Under the Southern Sky, because you do get, and then every now and then, I'll get someone that'll be like, oh, my book club just read, Lies and Other Acts of Love. Can you talk to us about it? And I'm like, oh my God, like, I don't even remember, like, I'm gonna have to go read it again. Like, what was that one about again? I mean, and it comes back, but it is funny. So yeah, you do sort of feel a little bit sometimes like you're in a time warp, and it's like sometimes by the time a book comes out, you haven't forgotten it, but you haven't read it in so long, and you've written a whole different book that it's like, okay, wait, I got to get back on that one.
And in this case, it's already with the publisher. Your next book is already there, and you're looking into 2022. That's what I find so fascinating.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's crazy. Actually, Under the Southern Sky goes to print in like 10 days. And usually I read it. So I read it, they call it like our first pass pages or whatever. And usually I read it one more time after that, but there really were so few changes in that draft that I haven't read that book in months. I mean, it's so funny. So I'm definitely going to read it when it comes out, which I normally don't do, but I'm going to.
Well, Lisa, question from the chat is Barbara, it's part 2 to her question. She wanted to know, how is it decided between paperback or hardcover release?
That's a really good question. And it's, I think it's kind of arbitrary, honestly. I mean, some people release in hardback originally from the get-go. My first 2 books came out with Berkeley. And I don't know if everything has changed so much, even in just the past few years. But when I was at Berkeley, it was a paperback publishing house. So that was what they did, is they published trade paperback originals, which was great with me for a lot of reasons. One, because I love to read paperbacks. But also just because I thought, I'm a brand new author. I liked the idea that someone could kind of take a chance on me and not have, to spend $28 on a book or whatever. So I really liked that. And so then when I moved over to Gallery, knowing that I had this 3-book series coming out, we just thought, it made sense for the series to be in paperback, and that had gone really well. And then that was a very successful thing for Peachtree Bluff. So we just kept going. And actually for Under the Southern Sky, there was a little bit of debate about it. I actually was like, I just don't feel like I'm moving. My 2022 book is like a little bit, it's not a departure, but there is a historical storyline in it as well. And I was like, well, if we're going to make this big leap and go into hardback, I think that's the time to do it. I think that makes sense because it's a slightly different book for me. And I think it makes a lot of sense to do it. But honestly, for me, we just sort of sat down and said, okay, like here's where the numbers make sense, honestly, because that probably when you move from paperback to hardback, you're going to have a little bit of a drop, but you still want to be able to sustain your readership. So that's where we were like, and like I said, a lot of people just come out in hardback from the beginning, and that's just how it always is. But I liked kind of being able to track that and look and see like when did the timing make sense. And so we'll see. I mean, and it's not even, for sure that 2022 will be hardback, but probably.
Another first here, we think. I'm going to jump in, if you don't mind, Lisa, with a question, because Sharon Person asked this online in advance and in the chat. Oh, you were going to do it? Okay.
I know. I'm glad you did.
Okay. And I think it's a very interesting question too. Back to Diana, who seems to have a lot of questions generated about her. She wants to know how the idea came about for having Diana have the t-shirts from her former boyfriend.
I saw that. I saw her ask that question, and I was like, what a good question.
We want to know.
So it started out just kind of like arbitrarily. I mean, it was something where, they're in that scene at the pool and she's wearing that t-shirt. She takes the t-shirt off and they're all like, oh my God, like she's hiding under and there's big t-shirts or whatever. And she says something in that scene, and it's like kind of in the middle of the book, but she says something in that scene like, well, I'll wear the t-shirt so I don't forget or something. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I love that. Like that needs to be a bigger part of the book. So then I went back, and anytime she talked about a bad boyfriend, there was like, I sort of just sprinkled the other t-shirts in there. But it makes sense, right? Like wear the t-shirts of all your bad boyfriends so you don't repeat your mistakes. I love the theory behind that.
Too.
But there wasn't any like real life inspiration or anything. It was just one of those moments of like, and actually that's a good example of something that had happened the first time I wrote the book. And when I went back and rewrote it, I was like, oh, this is gold. Like we need to do some more of this. And there's always that fine line, because I was like, is this going to hit on the page, or is it going to be like kitschy? And so when I turned it in, my editor like loved it. She like went crazy for it. So I hope readers liked it too.
I think so. I think it was thumbs up.
I
But
loved
now
it.
they sell, you can send t-shirts away, and they, make a quilt out of them.
That would be so funny, y'all. We should start. That's what we should have done. Like with Feels Like Falling, is you can make your bad boyfriend t-shirt quilt. Sleep with all your old mistakes so you never forget. That could be our slogan.
Right. We'll
I
have
love
to
that.
figure out some way to make that happen next
Yeah, let's just get right on that.
next time around.
$1 million idea.
I just loved that, because I have a pair of sweatpants from my ex-boyfriend from college that I've had just forever. And when I read that, I just laughed and thought, I'm not going to get rid of them, but I'm not going to wear them. I'm not going to keep them. But it's kind of like, what could I do with these?
You're not wearing those sweatpants? Oh my gosh, I would totally be wearing the sweatpants are gold, especially right now, Lisa. Come on.
They're too long.
Oh, I didn't think about that. Yeah, no, that would be a problem.
I'm only 5 feet tall.
I was picturing I don't know why. I was picturing the ones that are like banded at the ankle for some reason. That's what popped into my head.
They are.
Yeah. So you can make that work, Lisa.
Yeah, maybe I'll make it work.
Okay, this is turning into a completely different kind of.
This is like girls' night out with Kristy, Woodson, Harvey. Kind of like what we always wanted, right?
That's right. That's right.
I have a few old t-shirt relics, but it's funny because you just have them for so long that you don't even think about it anymore. You're just like, I couldn't possibly part with this just worn in threadbare t-shirt. Could not let it go.
Leslie Bodeman says the next book needs the t-shirt quilt.
The t-shirt quilt. That should be the title.
That's so funny.
It's like something that should be a little bit poignant, but it's not.
Well, it's interesting. You said that you kind of started out with that as just one little element there at the pool, and it turned into a lot more. Did you have any other like scenes in the book that surprised you in that way?
Yeah, and then there were some things that I ended up taking out too. That that always is a bummer, because you have to kill your darlings and the things that you love so much. But the other thing that was kind of surprising when I started rewriting the book is Trey just appeared. Like he wasn't in the first version of the book, which now I'm like, how could he not have been? I love him. He's like one of my favorite characters. And I don't even know why. I don't even remember like what scene I was writing, but he just appeared in it. Like it's like Gray was answering the phone. And that's what I love about writing, is just the surprises that kind of come out of nowhere and hit you. As she's driving and she answers the phone, and like, I don't know who's on the other end of the line. She's just answering the phone, and it's Trey. And so, then he became this whole kind of life force in this book, and this whole, great character in person, but he wasn't there to begin with. But I'm more of a, I think we actually talked about this on Friends of Fiction one night, that they were talking about, everybody was talking about what the word count of their first drafts and then the word count of their finals. And I actually usually end up making my final book shorter than my first draft, because I have to like sit with things for a while to be like, okay, I don't really need that. But I wrote this in the original draft. There's this part where they all go to Disney World together. And Diana's never been to Disney World. And so it's like a really big deal for her. And she's so excited to get to go to Disney World. And they get there and they've messed up their rooms. And so Gray and Andrew and I mean, it's like all of them end up having to like stay in this hotel room together. It's really fun. And it's just like this really funny scene. And I was sad to have to cut it, but I did it for the good of the story. So I had to do that.
Is there a way to read like cut stories?
You know what? In fact, I should send it to y'all because I have the cut chapters still.
Ooh.
I save them just for my own edification.
Well,
That's
you
so
need
cool.
to.
I know, I'll put them in the book club chat.
You nurtured them and
Yes, I grew them. My little babies.
Well, I can't believe that our time is passing so quickly. We're not quite finished, but I wanted to be sure that I asked you before we left about your blog, about your Design Chic blog, and that you do with your mom. Can you tell us a little bit about the blog and how it started?
I can. Yeah, it was actually really funny. So we've had the blog 10 years, which is unbelievable. But 10 years ago, Mom called me one day and was like, I need a new hobby. And I was like, what? Because she's really busy. Like she's got a lot going on. I was like, what do you mean you need a new hobby? And she was like, yeah, I was reading this article about how you have to keep learning new skills as you get older or the gray matter in your brain starts to shrink. And I was like, Mom, and I said, you should just unsubscribe from WebMD and then we won't have to worry about any of this. But no, so we were both redoing houses at the time. And I was like, you know what, Mom, we should start a blog. And she was like, great. What's a blog? And, this was 10 years ago. And I was like, it's a website. You can write about whatever you want to. And she said, oh, that would be really fun. We should write about decorating. And I was like, yeah, okay. And, it was just another one of those things that we were like, it was this random idea. We didn't think anyone would read it. We didn't tell any of our friends we were doing it. We weren't like posting it all over the place. Like, come follow our blog, like nothing. I mean, it was very like hush hush. We were just doing it almost to like share pictures with each other and like ideas and that kind of thing. And I mean, I think we thought we were going to do it for like maybe 6 months. And then at the end of 6 months, we had this nice little email list and people were following it. And we had just started to get some advertisers, like advertising requests. And we were like, maybe this is something that we should keep doing. So then of course, when it goes from random little side gig to, oh, maybe we should do this, you have to double down a little and kind of get serious about it. And so we did. And and we're still here and we just keep waiting for it to like, I don't know, quit working or like not be good anymore. I don't know what the threshold for that would be, or just sort of that bubble to burst and people to not do that anymore. And really even, we've seen in the past few years, all these people moving over, like quitting their blogs altogether and just moving over to Instagram. But the blog for us is still a huge source of traffic. So, and it's just a very different thing. I mean, it's much more visual than Instagram. If we have one picture on Instagram, we might have 15 pictures of that same house on the blog that day or whatever. But it's been really fun. We've met so many people, fellow bloggers and architects and designers. And we actually work with everyone whose work we actually feature. So, it's not, we have permission and all that kind of stuff. So it's been really neat. I mean, you never know what's going to happen. But we post 7 days a week and it is, it's like everything else. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it, but we really enjoy it. So 10 years in.
Wow.
Great. I follow you guys on Instagram and some of the pictures. I'm like, I want to go there. I want to go there. I want my house to look like that.
Me too.
I
love it. And I think it depends on how you, like what kind of consumer you are, I think I look at that stuff and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so pretty. And like, it doesn't make me feel like, oh, my house is terrible. You know what I mean? I don't feel like, I think it depends on, what kind of, I'm like, well, yeah, that would be really great, but it's really pretty to look at. It's almost like looking at beautiful scenery. Like, okay, my yard's never going to look like the Adirondacks, but aren't they pretty? It's kind of like that.
Well, before we let you go, we have to have you tell us about this little gem that I got my hands on. I cannot wait to read.
I'm
It is
so excited.
available for pre-order, and it comes out April 20th, Under the Southern
Good memory.
Sky.
Yep, Under the Southern Sky. I'm so excited about this book.
Sorry,
y'all.
I'm late. Here we go.
Okay. Yeah, and actually, you know what? I'll show you one really quickly. Wait, hang on.
We had our little Vanna White pose, Brenda.
Oh, I know. I had it right here, and I meant to do it at the same time since we were
The book. I know y'all were like, we have the book. What do you mean? No, I was going to show you. I have these really cute little tote bags that say, I read Kristy, Woodson, Harvey. And so I'm doing a little pre-order promo. There's a form on my website. And if you pre-order the book and you fill it out, I'll send you a tote bag. So kind of fun.
cool.
But yeah,
so cute.
Thanks. So Under the Southern Sky, I've been thinking about for a long, long time. It is a story about a woman named Amelia, who's an investigative journalist who inadvertently discovers while she's doing a story that some frozen embryos belonging to her childhood friend Parker and his late wife Greer have been deemed abandoned, which means that what could happen to them is sort of in flux. And so she is put in the unenviable position of having to tell him about this. And then, of course, Parker has to decide what he's going to do with what is effectively the last piece of this woman that he loved so much that is no longer here. So the story is told from the perspective of Amelia, a reporter, and her good Southern meddling mama, Elizabeth, and then Parker, who is the father of the embryos. And then we get to see little bits and pieces of his late wife, Greer, through her journal entries. And each of the characters has a secret. And they don't all necessarily relate to the embryos, but they all end up affecting what happens to them in the end. So I'm really excited about it. There are definitely, a lot of issues sort of at play in this story. There is it's a big deal right now, all of these frozen embryos that have been abandoned, and what do we do with them ethically, legally, morally? What are the consequences of that? And then also, people who, and that's how I got the idea for the story, was a friend of mine who had done IVF and felt like her family was complete, but had all of these leftover frozen embryos. And she was like, I don't know what to do with them. You should write a book about it. I was like, wow, thank you very much. That happens so seldom. Most of the time people are like, I have this story and you should write a book about it. And I think that was the great thing about it, is it wasn't like, this is this story, you should write a book about it. But she was like, all these people are going to be in the same situation. And, what's going to happen? This is going to be like a big thing in our society. So she told me this story like 5 years ago. And I just have been thinking about, how to really bring it to life and what was the story that I really wanted to tell. And there were so many different ways to go about it, but I felt like, the idea of being a single father, I think, is viewed differently than the idea of being a single mother. I think we can all pretty grasp single mothers pretty well. Single fathers, we don't see quite so much, especially single fathers that got that way on purpose. We do see mothers. So I really liked that angle. And then just the idea of someone being gone and this being the last living piece of them was really intriguing to me. So anyway, I love this story. I'm so excited about it. It's my favorite. Can I say it's my favorite?
I think you can. I think you can. It sounds really exciting. Can you tell us again, is it on KristyWoodsonHarvey.com that you have the
giveaway, the pre-order? Yeah. So actually, it's on, and if you go to my blog, it's on every blog post, and I have a new blog post coming up tomorrow, and it'll be on there. So it's just a little form, and it's very helpful because, we get a lot of these. So when we have the little form, they just go straight into a spreadsheet, and then you get your bag. So, and I do want to emphasize that, because I think some people thought that we just know who pre-orders, and we do not know who pre-orders. You actually do have to fill out the form. We have no way of I don't even think the publishers would have a way of knowing. So anyway.
Okay. Well, we'll put that in the comments after we wind up. And I can't believe it, but it's already been an hour. We're actually running just
Yeah,
a
we're
little
running
bit
late.
over.
I'm talking
I know.
anyway.
No, I can't believe it. But I just wanted to say a special thank you to you, Kristy, for joining us tonight and for sharing so much of yourself and of Feels Like Falling and Under the Southern Sky. Be sure to tune in this Wednesday night on the main page of Friends in Fiction when the authors chat with J.T. Ellison and Hank Philippi Ryan. You can snag any of their books this week for 10% off at the featured bookstore Parnassus Books in Nashville, Tennessee. And that's the one co-owned by Ann Patchett and her business partner, Karen Hayes. And you use the coupon code FriendsFiction10, all one word. We'll put that in the chat box too. Our next book discussion will be our holiday show on Monday, December 21st at 7 p.m. Eastern, where we'll talk about A Low Country Christmas with Mary Alice Monroe. And she's already posted about it. I think she's really excited to talk about it. Lisa, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yes. If you have not registered to join us on Thursday, please do. We have our Friendsgiving. It's a virtual Friendsgiving potluck, where we will be sharing recipes from our favorite books or our families or novels that have recipes like Kristen Harmel's Sweetness of Forgetting. And we are going to have so much fun. There'll be some surprises and some giveaways. So if you go on our page, there's an event. You can go there and register to get the Zoom link to participate. We're gonna have
That is gonna be so fun. Y'all are so cute. I love that idea. And I'm gonna post a recipe tomorrow.
Yay.
So we'll see what it is. I'm gonna do one of my grandmother's recipes. I think I was like maybe gonna do something from a book, but I think I'm gonna do one of my grandmother's, like good holiday recipes. So
yay.
yeah,
That would be perfect.
And some people want to actually cook the item, which is yes, please do so we can see it, but you don't have to.
Oh, how cute! Like to bring to the. Oh, I love that.
Me and Brenda and I are both gonna have things
from Mary Kay's.
Mine might be a drink.
Yeah, I mean, I cocktail all the way over here.
I'm gonna have a cocktail recipe, I think.
I love that. I love that. Well, thank y'all so much for having me and for all that you do. And thanks to everybody who came. Y'all are amazing, and we really appreciate you.
Thanks so much for such a wonderful evening, and we're so looking forward to Under the Southern Sky, especially after that description. So thanks again.
I can't
Have a
wait.
great evening and great reading, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.